How are you today?
It's feeling winterish in Houston. Like Josh said, it's like 10 degrees here, Celsius. That's chilly for us.
Well, good to see you're still in your shirt sleeves anyway, Jim. Can't be that chilly.
Absolutely. I am indoors waiting for it to warm up.
Fantastic. Okay, great stuff. Listen, a pleasure as always to have you with us. I know this morning you're going to be talking a little bit about change and about transformation and how to make change stick within your organisation. As Josh was just describing then, this has been a challenging year for many, I'm sure, you included. But I always like to start these conferences off on a positive note. So what is the biggest plus that you are taking from the last 12 months, Jim?
Wow, the biggest plus. I'm going to sound really shallow and selfish, but I'm going to say it anyway. Before COVID, my commute to downtown in Houston was an hour each way. I would say today my commute is 30 seconds if I go get a cup of coffee. So selfishly, avoiding 2 hours in Houston traffic is wonderful in my opinion. I'm afraid that my wife might not be as supportive since she has always worked from home. And those of you that know me know I'm not stealth. I don't think it's been that great for her, but it's been wonderful for me.
My wife tells a very similar story, Jim. She's a home worker, and I think I've come in and disrupted everything that she's used to doing. But wonderful, and not selfish at all. I think it is great that we're managing to spend a bit more time with our families and get a bit of work-life balance. Listen, I know that you've got some ideas that you want us to talk us through today, which is great. We'll also have some time for audience questions at the end of the session. But I think for now, I'm going to hand over to you, Jim. You can walk us through some slides here, and we'll take questions from the floor afterwards. Jim, over to you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Ben. So really just want to thank GDS for having me back. I've been part of this digital summit from the beginning. Have always found them to be just always informative. Get to deal and meet great people, very intelligent people that are actually doing things in the industry, and just really happy to be back. For those of you that don't know me, I've been in the industry, well, forever almost, it feels like. And I left industry about a year ago to be able to work across the industry as I see all of these challenges that I was facing at Statoil are really industry challenges. They weren't just Statoil or Equinor challenges. So it's very exciting to get to talk to so many companies and learn just so much. And so what I want to talk about today is this idea of getting change to stick. As Josh mentioned, and I don't have to tell you guys, 2020 has been a challenge. I mean, it's just uprooted everything that we do in our personal lives and our work lives. And so, I think getting the change to stick is about, okay, we've been forced to change. We have all this digital technology. Now, how do we actually get towards achievement, towards results? Because what I do see in some companies is even after the disruption, there's a rush to kind of go back to the way it was before. And that's just not going to be a reality. The way it was before isn't going to be a reality. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we really get digital transformation to stick. We've been talking about it forever, but how are we going to get it to stick? I think the next slide should be up. It is indeed. And so, as I said, achievement has not been great. And if you see 1% achieved or exceeded expectations, 32% failed to deliver or delivered less than 50%, and 66% settled for dilution. So digital transformations are freaking hard. And I think we've proven that in this industry. We've proven it in other industries that I've seen since joining Bain as well. It's just not easy for some reason. And, part of it, I personally don't understand, because selfishly, again, my life runs through my iPhone. And so I have been digitally transformed personally. And so, in business, it's just a struggle for me sometimes to understand, why we can't get there. So some of the reasons that digital transformation doesn't work, or that we have seen where it falls apart, first and foremost, is not focusing on the value. Now, I know that sounds duh, of course you focus on the value, but right alongside that, and that value certainly within oil and gas is dollars and cents, no question about that. But it's also about keeping people safer, keeping the environment safer. And so going hand in hand with this not focusing on value is this idea of just doing tech for the sake of tech. The way I like to say it is doing digital because it's cool. If you're doing digital because it's cool, or you want to focus on cool technology, or I see some companies just do drones. Yeah, we're going to do drones. Why are you doing drones? Well, they're cool and they fly. They can see all this and they bring in all this data, but it's not brought into kind of an overall view of what you're trying to accomplish with your transformation. And to be clear, these digital transformations, I call them business transformations, because they're really not digital transformation. We're leveraging technology to new ways of working towards reinventing ourselves. And so the other thing I would say along those lines of where we see failure is that solutions aren't scalable. We do these pilots, and the pilots, or you can call it pilot purgatory. I'm sure that there's some of you out there that have gone through pilot purgatory. Hopefully you've survived and you're moving on into a scaling world. But really, we see over and over again that we call it 1,000 points of light, where there's all kinds of different pilots that are going on, or experiments that are going on, and they haven't thought about how they're going to scale it. How are you going to scale it across either an asset or a group of assets? So you got to focus on that as well. The other thing that always frustrated me back in the day when I was responsible for implementing technology at Equinor was, we have, across all of the oil and gas industries, we have these siloed organizations. And I'm going to raise your hand to yourself, but if you're in a siloed organization, just raise your hand and feel like you're part of the team, because that's how most of us have existed in these silos. And so the organization gets in your way. Digital's great. And it's going to be great to hear Charles speak about the ins and outs of data, because data and digital enable us to work across the silos along the value chain. What a concept. We're actually going to be able to work along the value chain. What a novel idea. But our organizations have been structured and are still structured to where people are incentivized based on the silo they work in. And so even though we have all this great technology and we want to empower people to work differently, the organization just gets in the way. And then the other thing I would say is sprinting before walking. And is another failure pattern that we see. And what I would say is one of the things that I thought we did very well at Equinor was focusing on the cloud in the beginning and really investing in the cloud. Now that probably slowed down the ability to do all these pilots. But in the end, what cloud does and these other foundations like Agile, you learn about Agile, or changing your organization, getting different governance, different roles and responsibilities, is those things are foundational to allow you to scale, to allow you to achieve these great results and be one of those 1%. So what we believe are that, like I said, very first and foremost is focus on value, fit for purpose solutions that solve real business problems. Start with business outcomes. Don't take a technology and wander around looking for a place to plug it in. Start with an outcome. Think about the data you're going to need. Think about the technology. Think about how it's going to enable new ways of working, but focus on the value. And as I mentioned also, think about scaling from day one, right? Are you going to scale whatever you're doing across a whole bunch of assets, or are you going to scale it broadly across an asset? But think about the scaling. Think about your cloud strategy. Think about your IoT strategy. Think about cybersecurity, which has never been more important as we move more and more towards remote working. The other thing around clear governance, I mean, again, my 16-year-old would say, duh, Dad, but clear governance is really important. Who's going to do what to whom? As you're moving and reinventing and you're leveraging digital, knowing who's going to do what to whom is really important as you go along. And then I'm going to speak specifically about change management in the next couple of slides. And then operationalizing is the key to sustaining value. And a friend of mine at ConocoPhillips, Greg Lavelle, he says it's all about implementation. And I think he's right. I think he is absolutely right in that you have to embed these solutions in business as usual. And it's about not rewarding just the inventors or people that come up with the new ideas, but it's rewarding those people that don't have not invented here, that will take someone else's solution, implement it, create value, and then move on. So I think it's super important that you got to embed these into business as usual. And then the last thing, but manage both foundations and disruptions. And I talked a little bit about foundations, and that could be cloud, it's leadership behavior, because in this new world, it is about servant leadership. It is about what is my role in removing barriers for the team? And how do I help them be successful? And making sure, most importantly, that I'm not the barrier. And then disruptions is staying flexible and nimble and understanding what technologies are in the market or coming into the market. And just staying focused on that, knowing what's out there and what's coming. So even if you do all this, even if you do this and you're avoiding, you still have the challenge of change management. So what I want to talk about for the next few minutes here is change management and what winners do differently. And what I like about this particular slide is I like the very first bullet, right? That change is something you address during implementation. And the truth is, change, you have to think about it from day one. Not when you start implementing the new technology. You really need to be thinking through your overall change strategy at the same time you begin thinking about digital transformation or any kind of transformation or new way of working. And then what is important to understand also is that it's really hard to predict how an individual is going to react, how Ben might react, or how I might react, or someone else might react in terms of the change. Change can be irrational. It's emotional. And, I know that, my wife will confirm that when I'm emotional about something, my comments, my behaviors can be irrational. I know y'all find that hard to believe. But what is really important about the change is that the delivery risk of what you're trying to accomplish is predictable. It is measurable and it is manageable. So although I cannot predict everyone's behavior, we together can look at, okay, well, what do we believe the delivery risks are? And how do we mitigate those from the very beginning and then move that along with us? Because it's an iterative process as you go through this. The other thing I would say is that leadership behaviors, this is disruption, right? We're going through disruption. And I think, to me, more than ever before, leaders need to be able to connect with people. It's so critical that it's impossible anymore as we move towards multidiscipline teams working in an agile way. It's impossible for a leader to understand every task that's going to be ongoing to deliver the business outcomes. And so it really boils down to the leader being a servant leader, being one that removes the barriers. And like I said, God forbid, don't be a barrier. And then the last thing I would say is this isn't just taking the change management book off the shelf, the academic one. You take it off the shelf, you read it, throw a few tools at it, and you're good to go. It's beyond that. It's so important to have people engaged in the journey and really understand, be the ones that are changing how work gets done, that are reinventing how work gets done. And as a leader, really encouraging that, getting their hands on it. When I had responsibility for overall implementation, the things that my team developed that I thought were brilliant, if the business wasn't engaged hand in hand with us, those ideas went in the garbage. And so, but those where the business was highly engaged, had their hands on it, invented the new way of working, it actually stuck. So super critical, get people involved, get people's hands on it. And then the other thing I would say as we move forward is this idea of communication is super, super critical. And, if you're thinking about a blanket communication to everybody, and that's going to be effective, don't do it that way. And just follow a logical procedure again, which is find the groups that are going to be most impacted and focus your communication around them first. You can get to other groups as the change is moving that direction. Obviously, you can move on, but understand the groups that are going to be impacted. Understand how they're going to be impacted. Prepare that communication. Get them involved in this idea of reinvention, and don't just take existing process and sprinkle a little digital dust on it. Don't go that way. Reinvent. Give them an opportunity to just totally reinvent how work gets done, how their day goes. And as always, I think we find that people surprise us if we just allow them some space and empower them. And then the last thing, the next to last slide I want to touch on briefly also is, this idea of helping critical populations move up the curve. I think we've all seen some form of this along the way. And what I would say here, as you're moving down this change journey, is to get up the curve faster. Find the people that are believers. Find the people that like to work differently or are curious or have a growth mindset, and focus on them, because they will make this successful and they will make this work. The hard part of this is recognizing also that not everybody is going to get all the way up to the top. There are actually people that stopped using rotary phones many, many years ago only because they stopped making them. So you can't get everybody all the way to the top, but you can do your best. You can connect. You can try to get them involved, but recognize that unfortunately not everybody is going to get all the way through the change to where you want them. And then the last thing I just want to say is, change really is the new superpower, because in the world, if anything that we learned about 2020, it's about freaking change. And everything has changed for us. And how adaptable are we? And then how do we just encourage employees, encourage others, encourage our peers to just embrace where we are in the new way of working, in remote working, and really connect with people and give them confidence. And it's hard for some. It's great for me, but it is hard for some people. So spend the time connecting, and really within your companies, just build that muscle of iterative change, continuous improvement. And I think you'll see much more success and much more engagement from your employees and for your business. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, great stuff. Many thanks, Jim. I love that idea of building up these muscles, these organizational muscles. Muscle memory, of course, is a big thing in sports. And how can you make things instinctive? I guess is one of the challenges.